For over half a century, humans have endeavored to make business a force for good. But is the movement working? Or is it time to explore a new path forward? Welcome to Less Talk, More Action. We are your hosts, Joel Caesar and Owen Barrett, experts in clean energy, net zero real estate, decarbonization, and entrepreneurship. In each episode, we ask provocative questions and share stories from the front lines of sustainability with leaders in science, tech, and business taking real action to design a cleaner, better future. Thanks for joining the conversation. Now, let's get to work. Welcome to Less Talk, More Action podcast. My name is Joel Caesar, the world's undisputed voice of building decarbonization. Joining me as always is Owen Barrett, the founder and CEO of America's fastest growing solar company. Today's guest, Vince Romanin, founder and CTO of Gradient, a climate tech company reimagining how we heat and cool our homes. Vince was a super smart guy, great backstory, entrepreneur, taking on a hard problem, building new hardware in the HVAC space with a lot of legacy partners, created a whole new product that comes out of our window. So I'm sure you share my perspective that he was a great guest.
Yeah, I think it was awesome. I like how we're leaning into this, how I built this clean tech version. I think the interviews are great. I think the founders are super motivating. So I think it was another great interview.
Yeah, no doubt. And with that, that's a good segue into the bit where we're going to do some Elon fanboy, talking about great entrepreneurs who take on hard problems, especially integrated software hardware. So probably the best of all time in that category. But we're going to talk about some recent news he's been making, Tesla's been making, or I don't even know which company, SpaceX, I guess. It's all of them together, talking about space solar. So I shared this with you recently. There was a pretty good Twitter thread and debate going on about Elon saying space solar actually costs less than terrestrial solar because you don't need heavy glass or framing to protect it from extreme weather. So as soon as the cost to orbit drops to a low number, it immediately makes extremely compelling sense to put AI in space. So this is AI in space, but that's driven by this demand or this idea that energy, especially solar energy, will be even that's much more powerful and cost effective. I don't know if it's the right word to say it, but I don't actually know your perspective on this. What do you think of all this?
My perspective is that it's incredible. I posted about this on LinkedIn last week, and I got an unbelievable amount of hate from people in the sustainability industry. I mean, I don't know. I think to me, it's incredibly innovative. It's obviously it just embodies entrepreneurship at the core. He has an energy problem. All AI companies are now constrained by energy. And he has the capabilities to put his data centers up in space and power it with solar that he also controls. So it's to me, it's an incredible story about just a guy who's been grinding for his whole life. And now all his individual businesses are coming together to just be this super company. I think it's amazing, but people just can't look past him and Doge to acknowledge
what was the attack? Just because there was an anti-Elon stance?
God, just anti-Elon left and right. Just people can't separate issues.
The solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we've said before. It's like if you're out there saying I'm a climate person, this is what I care about, but I'm anti-Elon, then you're a joke. You're not a serious person. Yeah. There's no one who's done more for climate than Elon, and continues to. Yeah, and I'll just add, I just find it, again, just doesn't let anything stop him. And what's stopping us on Earth right now? A lot of it's political. It's NIMBYism. It's like this anti-billionaire hyperscaler perspective. And it's like, okay, well, I don't need you people anymore. I'm just going to get my energy from space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. It's the innovators are getting sick of being constrained by the idiocracy of Earth. And so they're just well, I'm going to go do it in space. I don't need you guys slowing me down. I think this is an incredible entrepreneurship story, but I think it's also a little alarming that it's easier to put data centers in space than it is to just figure out how to like build energy infrastructure faster on Earth. Like that's not a good sign for humanity.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we should end on that one. It's like this just shows people out there like this is how insane we are as a species right now. It's easier to put energy production in space. Well, with that, let's jump into our conversation with Vince Romanin. Joining us today is Vince Romanin, founder and CTO of Gradient, a climate tech company reimagining how we heat and cool our homes. Vince is a thermodynamics expert with a PhD in mechanical engineering from UC Berkeley, and he spent his career focused on solving one of the biggest contributors to climate change, HVAC emissions. Since founding Gradient in 2017, he's led the development of next-generation heat pump systems designed to dramatically reduce carbon while improving comfort and accessibility. Under his leadership, Gradient has secured millions in funding, won the Clean Heat for All Challenge, and is helping bring scalable, low-carbon heating and cooling solutions to homes across the country. So, Vince, welcome to Let's Talk, More Action.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Vince, we get right to work. We start all our guests off with the same question. How are you taking action to make the world a better place?
Well, as you said, we work on building and heating and cooling. We want people to open their window. I think that today, a lot of the challenges with building heating and cooling are the complexities of install, the interruption of the livable space, and we think that our solution provides both our customer, who's the building owner, with a way to install these through the window that is not disruptive to their infrastructure, which ultimately leads to higher NOI, better economics for the building owner, and it gives the tenant their window back. A lot of these buildings have window AC or no cooling at all, and people don't want to look at an AC in the window. They want to open their window. They want to look outside. They want to put a plant in front of the window and make their home feel nicer, feel more comfortable. And that's what we do. It's a win-win for the building owner's economics and for the tenant's home comfort.
So Vince, I'm not as familiar with Gradient as Joel is, but is this a new window unit? Like what's different about your product?
The biggest thing to the building owner is we are their lowest cost solution to get fully electric, cold climate heating systems into their building. And so from the building owner's perspective, most of them have single pipe steam or two pipe steam radiators. And if they're in a place like New York City or Boston that has some rules that they have to decarbonize, local law 97 in New York, most alternative solutions to their boiler are really long construction projects. And our system installs in probably a tenth of the time and costs of anything else. It hangs over the windowsill like a saddlebag. So you do put it through the window, but it only takes up a couple inches of the window, and you can still use the window after it's in. And so instead of calling an electrician, an HVAC technician, a building contractor, scaffolding company, asbestos mitigation, you're putting this in as easy as any other appliance, and you're out of the home, and the home's up and running in 30 minutes.
It's awesome.
And Vince, to clarify, it's a dual purpose heat pump, heating and cooling, right?
That's right. Yeah. The real hard part is it's tough to plug something into a regular wall outlet and still be powerful enough for a New York City winter. So most of these heat pumps are super high powered. They require 220-volt electricity. They require an electrician. Ours is so high performance that you only need the existing wall outlet. There's no upgrades needed to the building electrical system. It does cooling as well, but frankly, most of our customers are looking to solve a heating problem. They've got a boiler that needs to go, and they need to put in something that can handle cold climates and provide enough heat with the building's electrical infrastructure.
So what happens to like living rooms and kitchens that may not have windows? How does it work for spaces where there are no windows? Does it?
It works similar to other systems. So, you typically have a radiator in the major rooms and the minor rooms don't have one. Similarly, if you put in a mini split in any kind of home, you put in the major rooms that have more external facing walls that have higher loads. We always look, we check. So a typical install for us is like a 2-bedroom New York City apartment. And In addition to the 2 bedrooms, there's a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. One of our customers measured the temperature across all rooms. They put 3 gradients in, 1 in each bedroom, 1 in the living room. They measured over winter what temperature were the bathroom and kitchens. And they closely tracked the rest of the apartment because they have fewer external walls and are smaller rooms. If for some reason there was super leaky kitchens or bathrooms, if they were really big, if it was like a weird layout that they didn't get any heating and cooling from the remaining rooms, we would put in an auxiliary system. But in most projects, we found that isn't necessary.
Cool.
So Vince,
Joel, what are you getting
Owen,
yours?
what'd you say, Owen?
What are you getting yours for your house to help with your
Well,
attic situation?
Yeah, Vince. Yeah, what usually happens on the show when we have someone like you who's got new technology that can help me decarbonize my own home is at some point I'm gonna push you to give me a unit for free so that I can celebrate it on the show. So, Owen's, I think,
I'll turn it
jumping
around.
forward.
I'll turn around on Owen. Owen, when are you gonna help us use more solar energy? You guys work in multifamily too, which I think is amazing.
I'm all
it's tough
for
to
it.
get.
Honestly, when we see a project in New York City, we generally say no, thank you, because the city is so hard to work in relative to everywhere else in the country. But always happy to connect and bounce ideas around. You're just operating in one of our markets that's sort of it's like even more challenging to work in than California, and that's saying a lot.
I mean, I think we do see New York City as a big focus, and it's just so iconic as you think of these tall buildings with just rows and rows of window ACs and these steam radiators that are terrible. But we've got projects all across the Northeast and big cities. So any multifamily building that's generally older construction, we're in. So pick another market with multifamily buildings. We'd love to partner. I think broadly, this is a building owner economics problem. That is how we phrase it to our customer. We can deliver projects with lower capital cost than any other option they have, and with lower operating cost. And that's why that's the thing that drives scale. We still want to be a better product. We still want to be super exciting for the homeowner. We still want to improve user experience and comfort. But you don't drive scale if you're not a slam dunk win for economics. And so I think it would be great to work in more buildings with solar because we've got a lot of data on when our buildings are going to need energy. We have some ability to control when they use that energy, and we could save even more operating expenses for the building owner if we're using energy when it's cheapest.
Yeah,
It's
figure out a
interesting
way
you
to
guys.
partner.
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting you guys just had that exchange. Owen and I, in addition to the jobs we have now and the company he runs, in the past we were investors. We bought multifamily buildings. So under a brand we called Z&E Capital, we tried to launch a multifamily private equity company, and we bought 6 buildings. And one of our main value add theses, led by Owen, was that there was a missed opportunity in multifamily to install solar the right way and overcome the split incentive. But I remember, over years of talking with Owen and working on those buildings, and then I got deeply involved in a number of jobs I've had, Google, then Block Power, and even now, like focusing on building electrification, which is really hard to do, especially in a lot of markets that you're operating in, Vince. But this idea that, the traditional green building like philosophy is you start with good envelope, and then you go to efficiency, and then you do solar. But I know Owen likes to say well, if you could do solar, you do it because that's an opportunity, and you should put renewable energy on your buildings if you have the space. And then there's this other electrification thing that happens when we talk a lot on the show with many guests. There's been a few heat pump companies on here. The thing called the spark gap, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Vince, right? How gas is cheaper, and even when electrification is more efficient, it's still going to maybe hurt the operating cost. But once you have solar, it really helps the electrification argument. So, it's a long kind of tangent on sometimes the solar first does lead to probably the benefit of electrification being a little clearer.
It's funny you say that. I started my career in solar thermal, and so kind of looking at power plants. And I am tragically an engineer, and so I came at it from a pure, what are the physics, what are the thermodynamics that drove economics of producing electrons the cheapest. And what I learned in that process is the actual implementation costs are what drove all the projects. To your point, Owen, about how hard it is to do projects in New York City because of permitting. And so I joked that I had an infrastructure hangover after a couple jobs in solar thermal. And that's why when I shifted to building heating and cooling, I really focused on what is the building owner's perspective, what is driving the decisions that they make. And you quickly see that the thing that's driving their cost, which is usually front of mind for making decisions, is the infrastructure cost. Like it is the labor, it is the permitting, it is the asbestos mitigation. It is not the cost of the hardware. It is not the efficiency of the hardware. And so really shifting my focus from like, don't start from the engineering, don't start from the solution, start from the problem, start from deeply understanding like what is the customer thinking about, what are their pain points day in and day out. And that's, that led to an entirely different approach to how we architected our heating and cooling systems.
Vince, have you ever, I think the answer to this is yes, but have you helped building owners evaluate replacing a chiller boiler system in a multifamily property with your product? In taking into Joel, we should, now's not the time, but we should evaluate this for Australia.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. And
we still own the 232. Yeah, well, Heston, we already did. At first, I was thinking Heston. We just did like more traditional. I can't remember what you call the units.
We did ductless mini splits at Heston, I think.
Yeah.
So Vince, this is our private equity company. We're looking for solutions. So you might have just gotten a customer here.
Let's do it.
Big one. It's a 232 unit property. It's on a chiller boiler. Super old. The water bill is like through the roof because everything's leaking, and there's major heating and cooling problems. You check all your boxes.
What's your penetration in Texas, Vince?
It's not super high in Texas yet. We are early. We really have a focus on the Northeast, a little bit on the Northwest, and there's reasons for that. There's just such a huge density of customers. Texas has more of a cooling problem than a heating problem, obviously, and we're just so good at solving the cold climate heating problem that we end up competing super well against other options for building owners. And in Texas, generally, because there aren't high heating loads, the economics are slightly different. I still think we can win out projects there, and we've had a couple folks look at us in the South broadly across the country. But there's just a big gravitational pull in old northeastern cities.
So Vince, let's I'm gonna transition the conversation for a minute here. We love learning about the tech and the solutions and solving problems, which we're doing here, learning about your product. I'm happy to share more in a bit, but we also love learning about the process of being an entrepreneur, starting a company, how you got here. So you've alluded a little bit of your story here, but tell us how you landed on this product, this moment, the journey of being a founder, what you're learning about it, and how the whole thing's going.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I was a research engineer. I really wanted to work on climate. I was a thermodynamicist doing early in my career turbines, and then later broadly solar thermal power plants. It started from this realization that the sort of technical side of the climate movement was ignoring buildings. There's a huge focus on the electric grid and how we decarbonize it with solar, wind, whatever it is. There's a huge focus on transportation and how we electrify transportation, as there should have been. But the built environment is about as big of a climate problem as both of those sectors. There was both no discussion of how we were going to solve it, and a lot of sort of unknown sources of emissions. And by that, I specifically mean leaked natural gas and leaked refrigerants are massive fractions of the carbon footprint of buildings. No one was talking about it. I felt like a crazy person talking about how refrigerant emissions were such a huge part of climate emissions. And then the same year we were founded, the book Project Drawdown came out and called out refrigerant emissions as the number one thing we can do to mitigate climate change and finally shed some light on this sector. And so that's how it really started. I was like, how is no one focused on this giant problem? I don't think that was enough to start a company. Starting a company, as I'm sure you both know very well, is super difficult. Like, it takes a lot of conviction. And I think the second piece of conviction came from the fact that like the business model, the economics, the user experience of HVAC was so slow and broken. And once I realized if we remove the barriers to install, you you just make such a strong value prop for the building owner, such an amazing experience for the tenant, and such a win for the climate that you don't even have to talk about to anyone because you're so much better on the economic side. It was this triple win that, I could not stop thinking about once I realized it. Obviously, the difficult part is you have to design a new HVAC hardware platform from the ground up. And I think as an entrepreneur, you get to pick your one mountain to climb, your one super hard thing to do, and it better be worth it. You better have like several other unfair advantages if you get over that mountain. And that was the one we picked. Is like, all right, if we can rethink the hardware platform of HVAC, we could really have a business model and a customer value prop that is unlike anything that's possible today. That's what got me obsessed with this problem.
Vince, how hard was it figuring out the how to manufacture a new heat pump? What was that process like? And the reason that I ask is we're thinking about manufacturing some hardware for our business model, but it's a bit intimidating. So what was that like for you?
In many ways, it was probably the hardest part. It's a little bit different now because I think HVAC has gotten more attention. There's more HVAC startups around, which is great. At the time, there was not a lot of focus on this sector, and there's no DigiKey for HVAC, right? If you're building an electronics company, you go to DigiKey and you can buy any, for those who are listening who aren't hardware nerds, any electronic component you want, and you can prototype something. We had to figure out who was going to give us a box of 50 compressors to build our first prototypes of this system, right? All of the HVAC hardware engineers, the people who knew thermodynamic cycles, how to charge a system, et cetera, they're not at startups. There's no startups that did that. And it took us a lot of work in relationship building to find the suppliers and the manufacturing partners who would take us from 0 to 1.
At this phase you're describing, when you're prototyping and you're trying to find compressors, where are you as a company? You sold someone your vision of a next generation window unit and you got funding, or was this in a lab? Maybe tell us, where are you in the process as you're describing this?
I think as with any journey, there's a couple people, you get 99 no's and then you get the one yes that matters. And, that happened multiple times over our history. We started at a small R&D lab called Other Lab here in San Francisco. And we got into a fellowship program called Activate, at the time called Cyclotron Road. That was sort of the initial people who said yes, even though no one's talking about building heating and cooling as it pertains to climate, this is an important problem. And then we were out pitching it for a while. And the first VC who helped us was a guy named Matt Rogers, the co-founder of Nest. And I spent every VC pitch that year telling people what refrigerants were. Nobody knows that there's this magical gas that lives inside of your air conditioner. And Matt Rogers, of course, had built a hardware startup in heating and cooling that was a better user experience and exited it. There was no other company like Nest that produced alums like Matt Rogers that would understand this problem. He got it right away. Huge supporter early on, and that opened a lot of doors for us, including the industrial designer who we worked with who is a former Nest employee as well, Rocky Jacob, who helped us get to this design that when someone sees it, it becomes instantly obvious why this is going to be better for their home. And then similarly on the engineering side, we met a professor at MIT named Kip Bradford who was doing a lot of research with HVAC systems, and so had a garage full of HVAC parts, and was not just an MIT professor. He was literally brazing systems together in his garage, and without finding the sort of roll your sleeves up and build these systems, we wouldn't have been able to get off the ground. And so each of those key pieces were really important, and you just have to believe enough that what you're doing is important and be able to paint a picture of why the future is going to be exciting. And then you find the other people who share that vision, and it's hard to say how to replicate it because there's only one of all of those people who could have got us to where we are. And it's hard to imagine what our path to now would have been like if we didn't get that one yes.
Vince, when you were explaining about educating people about refrigerants, were you pitching to specifically climate tech or clean tech VCs?
100%. Yeah. In those days,
Weren't
yes.
you shocked at how little they understood about the problem that they're supposedly trying to solve?
Yes. Absolutely.
This is a common theme. You're like the fourth or fifth founder I've met that's pitching non-software climate tech and was like met with just like, expressionless faces during the pitch because no one understood what you were talking about.
Yeah. I think it's part of the grind in any case. So Other Lab does a lot of government research grants that turn into companies that spin out. And so a lot of our early funding was from government research grants. And we would go to these conferences with the program directors of whatever federal program. At the time, RPE was one of the biggest, who were writing grant programs that, researchers like me would apply to. And it took years. We got, I think, 15 rejected grant applications before we got our first yes. And then we got 4 yeses in a row. And we had to talk to the program directors and say, hey, I think you guys should also be thinking about this climate problem. You're doing a lot in transportation. There's traction there, but there's white space over here where no one's thinking about it. And it was a lot of back and forth to educate them. I think that is true of the VC community as well. I think that, we had to do a lot of sort of, for lack of a better term, evangelizing to get folks aware of what was coming. And I hope that led to us sort of riding the right crest of that wave so that we could, get the funding and get the community support that we needed to grow as a company. But it does take a lot of education. And there's some benefit to it because people can see when you're passionate and an expert about something. And to sort of be a thought leader and bring everyone along with you does help, but it takes a lot of work to get there.
I was sitting here trying to remember Other Lab. I was like, that rings a bell for me. And I saw them on the website. It's now reminding me I have my own journey with refrigerants. There's a consultant based out of the Bay Area called Effecterra. Have you heard of them? They're big into refrigerant based consulting.
It rings a bell. I'm sure I've met someone from there somewhere,
So
but I don't remember where.
So I was at Google 2019, and then I got put in charge of the net zero program for global real estate at Google. And if they wouldn't have hired me off the street, I wouldn't have called myself a climate expert, but I was right place, right time, and I had good project management skills. So I got put in charge of this really large program. And like a lot of groups that are trying to think about net zero at the company scale or building scale, we were, I don't want to say blindsided, but really amazed by how large the refrigerant leakage problem was already a source in our existing emissions. And then as you project a plan to electrify a global office portfolio, you then find refrigerants probably will become an increasing challenge to your emission footprint. So we did a ton of research on it, and we worked on a lot of different pieces about it, like not just like sourcing the better refrigerants, which I think is what you're working on, like using refrigerants with less global warming potential, but also how do we stop them from leaking? So I agree. I think it's just important here on this show, as we try to always educate about lots of things we're working on, that it is, like you said, I think the Effecterra guy, he's a friend of the show, name's Tristan. He used to always say, what did he say? It's like the wicked steps, refrigerants are the wicked stepsister of the net zero world, because just like no one really wants to give it the credit.
Yeah.
But so I guess back to this point, like let me ask a question then based on that. So you're describing this like HVAC buildings. That's kind of where you started. How did you land on why a window unit? And then what led you to this, like, let's focus on refrigerants piece as you're building the tech?
So I think refrigerants probably one of 3 legs of this tool from a like HVAC and climate perspective. And I felt exactly like you did. I was like, refrigerants are designed to be odorless and colorless so that you don't notice when they leak. And that means that there's massive amounts of leaks that we're probably not realizing. And I was like, it is very possible and maybe even frequent for a heat pump system to have more climate emissions than the fossil fuel system that it replaced because of its leaked emissions. And no one was talking about it. Furthermore, we developed refrigerants in early 20th century. It was ammonia and hydrocarbons, and so either poisonous or flammable, which is bad. And so,
But both of those have low global warming potential, right?
They do.
Yeah.
And so a guy invented, what was this guy's name? He invented CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. Same guy invented leaded gasoline. So two of the worst planetary environmental disasters by the same engineer. Thomas Midgley, I think it was. Most harmful engineer in history. Anyway, so he invented CFCs, odorless colors, obviously led to the hole in the ozone layer, right? And so we have the Montreal Protocol in the 80s that phases it out. It was partially funded by the chemical companies who owned patents on CFCs because their patents had run out and they developed HFCs and they wanted to make margin on this new gas. So they paid for the phase out of CFCs to replace with HFCs. HFCs are, of course, very strong global warming forcers. The same companies paid for the Kigali Amendment, which helped phase out HFCs, because they have patents on HFOs. HFOs are very bad for most life, animal, human, plant. And I'm like, are we crazy that we're going to run this experiment again? Like, we had the hole in the ozone layer, we have climate change. Why would we switch to HFOs? If we electrify our buildings with HFO-based refrigerants, we're going to be back here again in 10 to 20 years where we're asking everyone to rip out their HVAC system because the refrigerants are bad. And that was sort of the climate challenge around refrigerants that made me super focused on this sector. But the other piece is, this is one of the things that drove me to go modular. If you go modular, if you never have to touch a refrigerant connection on site, one, it means you use less total refrigerant because we're not running long lines. Two, it means that every sealed system is brazed in a factory and not using, first of all, human error in the field, weird connections that can break over time.
Just less points of failure, right? Yeah,
exactly. And so you can see this in the data. Factory sealed systems have about 1/8 the leakage rate of any system that has a field connection. And the more field connections in a system, the more leakage you see. Grocery stores have many, many connections in the field to set up their refrigeration systems. They leak an average of something crazy like 25% of their refrigerant per year. Wow. And so we said, we are never going to bring a refrigerant tech to site to work on our system. Our system's going to be sealed in the factory, and that's the way it's going to be forever. It lets us use less refrigerant as well, and it lets us use better classes of refrigerants that are less harmful. And so when you add up these three things, we expect our refrigerant footprint to be something like 95% better than competing mini split.
So we don't have much time left. Again, I've heard about you for a while. You and I met recently in person, which led to this podcast. So we're grateful to have you on. How's it all going? I mean, how's the company? What's the next frontier? You've taken over New York City?
A lot of northeastern cities. So we started shipping this product that's behind me. This is our second gen product. Our first product did heating, but it didn't run as low of a temperature. This product runs down to negative 13F, and so a winter in New York City or Boston is not a problem. We have projects with a lot of different customers, some low income, some public housing, some market rate. We also love multifamily because frankly, like, these are the buildings that are going to see the worst effects of climate change first. These are the buildings that have populations who sometimes have, compromised health, who are most susceptible to the health dangers of heat waves, and so probably need cooling going forward and don't have it. These are the buildings that see the most frequent heat outages in winter. We have a project with New York City Housing Authority where a third-party study showed we reduced their heating energy per square foot by 87%, which is huge, 87% reduction. That translated to a 50% reduction in their heating bills. And so we're not just saving on capex, we are saving a huge amount on energy, enough to overcome the spark gap that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Although
you're probably also in New York encountering a lot of oil buildings, right? Where the spark gap's not as much of a challenge. Yeah.
Quite a few.
Do you guys, how's the experience been with, oh, sorry, go for it. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was going to say Boston Housing Authority also did a project with us, and they reported to Bloomberg that they reduced their capex of this retrofit project by choosing Gradient by more than 80%. And their building was unique. They had a couple challenges to retrofit that we helped them solve. And so I don't think every customer we're going to be 80% cheaper than the competition. Usually we're 10 to 50% cheaper than the competition now.
Still pretty good. What's the experience with tenants? I mean, we have horror stories with tenants dicking around with thermostats and basically breaking everything that they can. I mean, now you put one of these units in every window in a low income multifamily property. What happens?
You can see some of the interviews. There's a local news station interviewed some of the tenants in New York Housing Authority, and they're gushing about it. Like, they love it. Like, they're getting a radiator, which is effectively a burn hazard. They've got to open their window in winter to stay comfortable. They're getting rid of it, and they're replacing it with comfortable, quiet heat. They're getting cooling. Either they're getting their window back and they couldn't use it before, or they are getting cooling for the first time. And so tenants generally love it. Like, we have this shelf on top. I can show you, it's behind me I'll describe it for those who aren't watching the video, but like, there's the shelf on top. And so you see tenants put flowers on it. You see tenants put pictures of their family on it.
Look at this, the first interactive product demo here on the Let's Talk More Action podcast.
Joel, this is when you got to tell them about the Let's Talk More Action bump.
Yeah, well, that'll be part of my negotiation with him, for him to give me one for free so that I can trial it and tell the whole world about it. Well, actually, on that point, Vince, like, you know, you mentioned building owners. Like, seems like you're targeting the owner of the building, like, at scale. But like, can I buy one?
Not yet. We get that question a lot, unfortunately. So usually when people like you say, can I get one? It's for their single family home. And that's something that, like, we are looking at long term, but we're just so focused on like multifamily building owners right now, because this is such a pain point for them. It lets us do larger projects. As I mentioned, it's often people who need it more. But you guys own multifamily buildings too. So I think I might take you up on that demo.
Don't get distracted by Joel's single family application.
Exactly.
Don't do it. I love the focus that you have on multifamily. That's how I think successful companies are born. And just tell Joel he's going to have to wait.
Yep. The riches are in the niches.
And it's great because you really can. We've done this with customers. We can show up with 1 unit, 5 units, 10 units. We put them in that day in a couple hours, and we say, like, try it out, see how it goes. We have all these case studies with full building projects that show great results, but like, it's incredibly fast and low risk to just put it in and turn it on and live with it.
When you say we put them in, like, you guys do an install, or can anyone install it? He's like, I mean, I'm watching the video on your website. Like, it looks like they're made to be easy to install, but yeah, tell us how the process works.
When we train teams to install, it's like a 1-day training process. We do want to make sure that it's installed properly, but it's not complex. It's not more complex than an IKEA couch. Like, in our beta program, we did ship to single family homes, and we just had people open the instruction book and read it themselves, and they can do it. So it's really not rocket science. You need to turn a screwdriver. You do not need to put a single screw in your window. You do not need to put any holes in your wall. You do not need to wire anything. It's like, I don't know, it's like putting in a dishwasher. You literally just plug it in.
With your guys' app, is there a way for building owners to set limits on heating and cooling?
Yes.
So we control like all the
ahead.
tenants. You know, they're not going to heat past whatever 75, and they're not going to cool below 65.
That's right. So
I was going to ask a little on that, like, same sort of line of questioning. Can they participate in demand response?
Great question. Almost is the answer to demand response. So we've got an app. So like the tenant can have an app, and the tenant can like turn the system on when they're at work. If they're coming home and they want to pre-cool, they can turn it off if they leave for vacation. The building owner has a portal. So like a real like B2B portal where they can group systems into fleets, so they can put everything in a certain wing in a fleet. And the building owner can do a lot. They can set upper and lower temperature limits, as you suggested. We actually have an option to control the amperage in systems if you want in a certain wing the amperage to be capped at a certain level. And we can manage sort of maintenance alerts, operation, make sure you're meeting any temperature requirements that your jurisdiction might have via that building owner's platform. And then for demand response, it is certainly part of our vision that these systems should participate in demand response. First of all, I'm willing to bet we are the lowest energy use in terms of net energy and peak of probably any other electrified heating solution. And that's because we're distributed and it's because we're super efficient. We have really, really high ratings. And we want to collect the data of how the building responds to a storm so that the building owner or the utility or whoever it is can manage their peak energy usage and minimize electrical upgrades. Eventually, we want to do active demand response where we're pre-cooling or preheating or working with a battery in the system in the building. We've done this on pilots, and so the technology is there. And soon it will be a more rolled out program, but there's no commercially available demand response product quite yet.
Vince, if I told you that I needed 500 units for my property in Dallas, are you guys at that scale?
Yeah.
Would it take time to roll out, or like we could go, yeah, cool.
Call our sales team, we'll give you a lead time. Luckily, we've got a lot of demand, so it's not tomorrow, but it's going to be a number of months, and in a single digit number of months, and we'll work on getting your project done.
Could you guys help us evaluate, like if we give you last 12 months of water bills, we tell you the specs on the chiller boiler system, can you help us estimate water, gas, probably not electric savings, but water and gas savings?
Yes, this is very typical. A customer calls us with a number between 100 and 1,000 units. 500 is probably pretty close to the average. We help them understand bill savings. It's very fast for compatibility. So like we look at your window and make sure your window is compatible. The answer is yes, we do that. That's what we do with basically every customer.
I think, Joel, we should do the analysis, and I think we should have a follow-up podcast.
Yeah, wow, this would be great, Vince. The first Let's Talk More Action install on the co-host building in Texas. This is amazing.
My closing advice for any startup founder is always be selling, even when you're on a podcast.
Yeah, look at you. You come on the podcast and you're selling. Well, Vince, this has been fascinating. As you can tell, we're both very interested in the product, and we're going to be happy to celebrate it. But we're out of time here. We'll have you back. Like I've said this a bunch on the podcast before, but Owen and I are really leaning into folks like yourself being on the show and kind of making this like the how I built this for climate tech companies. Mm-hmm. So you're at a certain stage in your journey. We'd love to have you back a year, 2 years from now when you're continuing your world domination. So please continue to be a fan of the show. But as we wrap up,
Vince, wait, one more question before Joel gets to the last question. Sorry, one more practical question. Is your product eligible for CPACE financing?
I'm going to have to connect you with our policy team. We are eligible for most of the financing programs targeted at heat pumps, but It is a unfortunately complicated web of different rules in different jurisdictions. We had to have the DOE write a new class of heat pump system for our heat pump because we did not fit into any of the written rules for heat pumps. And then we had to get the qualified products lists like CEE, NEEP, Energy Star to adopt the new category that the DOE wrote. We are the, I think, only product in our category on CEE's list, advanced tier, which is the highest tier. We have a policy person who works with our customers in whatever jurisdiction they're in to make sure that we qualify for incentives and helps us get qualified if not. And so I'd have to find out for that specific one. Generally, the answer is yes, but we can have our policy person work through and get you the specific answer.
Cool. All right, Joel, I'm done.
Well, on that point too, I was just looking at Vince. I do a weekly post on LinkedIn where I start with cool decarb tech I think the world should know about. I was trying to think if I already shared you guys. If not, I will do it. You guys will be my post this week.
Love it.
So,
great.
You get the Joel
happy
Caesar
to share.
bone.
But yeah, let's wrap up on this, Vince. You're an entrepreneur. I'm sure you're going to love this question because you can't really be an entrepreneur, right, if you don't have some optimistic view of the future. There's in climate and sustainability, we tend to focus too much on bad news in our field. So we like to end the show on a sign of optimism. So Vince, what gives you hope for the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as any entrepreneur or any person alive these days, there's a lot of pulls in either direction. I think the thing that makes me most optimistic is that the climate movement has gone from sort of a green premium and like suffer for the planet toward, in these tough times especially, more amazing products and fundamental economics. And I think that the work that both of you are doing are great examples of that too, right? Like, Owen, your website says NOI like 5 times on the front page.
SEO, baby.
Yeah. And And I think that there's, the climate movement has really hammered on like, look, there was work that needed to be done to make these technologies cost effective. They are cost effective in many cases, especially in buildings, by a lot. And so the movement is really hammering on like, how are we going to save money for customers? We're replacing 100-year-old boilers with modern tech that is like using advanced manufacturing, using communications. There's no reason that you can't replace a 100-year-old boiler with a product that is 10 times better in every way. And that focus in the climate movement is leading to like a lot of these projects happening behind the scenes. They're not on the front page of like New York Times, but they're just like saving real people money. And that's what's going to drive scale.
So well said. And yeah, I don't know if you were about to say like my company, I'm at the Cambio founders, that they come from real estate asset management, and it's how we deliver our product as well. It's
Yeah.
there's regulation and there's climate movements and targets that we can support and we should, but scale is going to happen when your product helps deliver ROI. So couldn't agree more.
Yep.
And with that, Vince, let's anything to plug. So how do people follow along with your journey? Are you active on LinkedIn? What's the website? Social media? What's the plug?
All the usual places. LinkedIn, primarily. I think we focus more there than Instagram, but we are active on Instagram and X. Go to our website, gradientcomfort.com. If you're, eventually we're going to get to single family homes and consumer as well, but especially if you're, a building owner or building maintenance person, if you live in a multifamily building, if you're in a co-op, take a look at our website. We've got case studies posted of how we've saved building owners money, and, you can find us there.
Well, great stuff, Vince. Thank you for joining. Owen, thank you as always. Thank you to our audience. You can also find Owen and I on LinkedIn, usually actively antagonizing the more talk, more complaining sustainability crowd. You can find this podcast and more great content at lesstalkmoreaction.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. And until next time, we encourage you to ask yourself, what are you doing to take action to make the world a better place?